What's up? Dave here with that Jacob too.
Yes, I'm fresh from bouncing around Taipei and Computex to LA and E3 and back again. And the world lag has sometimes made it a struggle to remember my own name. So thanks for the help.
No worries. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. No, not your jet lag. You're a young man. Get over it. We're going to be talking about the seismic event that the two biggest tech and game shows have been for the PC hardware scene.
Big stuff.
Yeah, better get on with it then.
Yes, it's all coming up AMD. I was at both the Computex and E3 events where first Ryzen and the Navi have been fully unveiled to the tech press and the PC gaming public at large. But I've also been with Intel and Nvidia in that time too, and no one's standing still in this technological arms race.
Kind of all knew what was coming. The rumour mill has been grinding away at both the big new AMD CPU and GPU technologies for months, but having these grand official and very public announcements has sparked the competition into action.
And that's something we're all going to benefit from. Whether or not you're going to buy a new Ryzen 3000 processor or Navi RX 5700 series graphics cards, their very existence is just going to make your world better.
And this is how AMD is making PC gaming great again.
Seriously? Really? You can do that?
Looking back, AMD has been responsible for a lot of the ills of the PC gaming world in the past too. Not through any purposeful malevolence or even failures on their part. Mostly it's down to a few poorly timed gambles or just the straight inadequate, uncompetitive products it pushed out of the door. And that meant buying or building a gaming PC was, for a long time, purely a question of which Intel processor and which Nvidia graphics card you were going to stick into your machine. Of course there were a few exceptions where AMD had a couple of products that punched above their weight, but for the most part they were the budget option, at best. And lack of competition is a nightmare for the consumer. Yes, Intel started sandbagging heavily, releasing ever more iterative processors with barely any real technological advancement, with a slowly creeping price tag increase, and a regularly changing platform which meant you had to keep changing motherboard too. And arguably that's something which is now coming to bite Intel in the ass right now. Getting locked into that purely iterative way of thinking has meant it's been slow to respond to AMD going wide and hard at the CPU market with Ryzen. And on the Nvidia side, it was a similar story, though maybe with a little more technological movement and maybe some more occasional Radeon competition to deal with from AMD. Years back, Nvidia went hard at efficiency and performance per watt, which had the combined benefits of giving the green team the best GPUs, but also incredibly high margins with its cards, and so it has made a bucket load of cash. And that legacy is still visible today, where its 12nm GPUs are still more efficient than AMD's 7nm chips. But with no competition, its GPU prices have crept up too. Where a top-end graphics card was $500, that's now almost considered thoroughly mainstream, and you can thank Nvidia for that. It has got to be said, however, that through all of this, both Intel and Nvidia were making the best products. So as PC gamers, we were getting some genuinely great PC hardware, yet we had no choice but to put up with the increased pricing or limiting practices, such as Intel locking out overclocking on its processors purely so it could sell unlocked versions for more cash. We had to put up with that because AMD was putting up almost no real competition. And while you could say most of the problems were AMD's fault, and we do, we may not like what happened, but Intel and Nvidia were just playing from the classic capitalist playbook. That's all in the past though, and AMD is making up for it all because all the good things that are going to happen in the PC market for us normal gamers over the next few years, you'll be able to trace directly back to AMD. So this is arguably where the biggest shift has taken place, with AMD's continuing momentum with Ryzen. While the first gen Ryzen processors were a qualified success.
A big success. Let's not get into this again.
Yeah, we're not going to get into this again. They were a qualified success. But even though they offered more CPU cores at the same price point as their Intel competition, the blue team still had a very definite gaming edge and carried on doing its own thing regardless of the new competition.
But AMD came back again with the Pinnacle Ridge 2nd gen Ryzen processors, which improved on their forebears on every count.
And it was that continuing momentum that AMD really needed to start turning heads, to stay in the public consciousness and prove it wasn't just a flash in the pan. And it also needed to prove to the professional market its server and high-performance computing chips could compete too.
But that's another story. Sticking with gaming, AMD's Ryzen 2000 CPUs this time around were genuine contenders, and Intel now had to start working harder to create a reason for PC gamers to buy its chips.
And today, Ryzen 3000 is almost here, another performance step on from the previous generation and pushing the core count up considerably.
Importantly, however, this is the first time that AMD actually has a potential performance lead over Intel, as well as a clear and definite technological advantage too. In terms of the perception of AMD's hardware, that's a real big switch.
On all counts, AMD is bringing the superior processor to market, and Intel's obviously and rightly worried.
There is a sudden flurry of activity from the dozing CPU giant, and it knows it's got to do something to even get back on a level with its main rival. But the fact is, as much as it wants to challenge AMD to come at me with real-world gaming performance, bro.
Yeah, come at me, bro.
Yeah, bro. As much as it wants to call AMD out, it doesn't have anything tangible to bring to the table anytime soon to stand up to Ryzen.
It will point to its 10nm Ice Lake chips, which, despite the numerical nomenclature, it will say is actually the equal to AMD's 7nm process, but that's just a laptop part. Ice Lake's got its own 18% IPC boost, which could still keep the Sunny Cove architecture ahead of a competing Zen 2 CPU in gaming terms, but it ain't hitting the desktop for a while.
On the desktop, we've got Comet Lake coming sometime 2020, or later this year at the outside. That will give us a 14nm 10-core processor to go up against AMD's 7nm 12-core and 16-core CPUs.
And that ain't a good look when you're trying to wrestle back the top technology title. It means Intel might have to do something drastic and potentially very different before we see 10nm plus desktop chips.
Maybe killing the K series and unlocking all its processors, or maybe even dropping the pricing on its CPUs to give them a fighting chance. Basically, all the things that will benefit us gamers, while Intel tries to core our favour over AMD.
And remember, Intel's not allowed to use any of the somewhat nefarious tactics it employed the last time AMD had a competitive architecture. And then AMD might decide to respond in kind too when Intel does hit back, creating a positive spiral of PC processing, pricing and power.
Good job. Things are not quite so desperate in graphics. While Intel is reeling from the game-changing potential of the Ryzen 3000 processors, Nvidia isn't quite so cowed by AMD's new graphics cards.
It's still got the fastest and most efficient GPUs, holding on to the psychological advantage that gives it in the minds of gamers. And while evidently not of benefit to us consumers, Nvidia has been insulating itself to any potential Radeon resurgence.
We may not have liked it,
I don't think anyone did.
But the incredible high pricing and shifting GPU tiers of the RTX Turing cards has given Nvidia a lot of wiggle room against the upcoming Navi RX 5700 series graphics cards.
AMD has taken aim at select Nvidia cards with its new GPUs, targeting both the RTX 2070 and RTX 2060 in terms of specs, price and performance. With that, AMD has stuck to the new status quo then, and pegged its new graphics cards with the same high price points as Nvidia introduced with Turing.
But who knows what Nvidia is doing in response? I certainly don't.
Yeah, for various reasons, Jacob's going to shut up now, and I'm going to explain how Nvidia is reportedly going to react to Navi, all based on the published leaks that have come out of E3. Basically, it's making super versions of each of its RTX cards, which will give them close to the gaming performance of the GPU tier above them, but for pretty much the same price. Though apparently the high-end Super 2080 Ti may not be launching at the same time as the others. This will effectively shift the graphics card pricing tiers back down again, and will probably mean that the targets AMD has picked out for its Navi cards won't actually be where they're currently aiming at.
Whatever the truth of the matter, Nvidia is likely to release a refresh sometime this year, and AMD may end up having to drop the pricing of its RX 5700 series cards to match. Let's hope there's enough wiggle room in its Navi margins to manage it.
But whether or not we actually want to buy an RX 5700 GPU, the very fact they exist has encouraged these rumoured Turing range shifts, and it's going to make things better for all us PC gamers when we want to buy a new graphics card. So thanks AMD!
And both red and green might have to change things up when blue arrives. Yes, while Intel is getting hosed in the CPU game, it's also opening up another front and hoping to compete in PC gaming graphics too.
So it doesn't actually matter if it produces a seriously disrupted graphics card with the first Intel Xe GPU or not. If it can produce hardware that's somewhere close and then build on it with a rolling momentum, the increased competition in the graphics card market will only mean good things for us consumers.
Admittedly, that's a tough ask, but maybe it should hit up AMD's Ryzen team for some pointers on that.
There are generally a lot of reasons to be negative about the world situation at the moment. But while it can't hope to offset the dark undertones of the 20-teens, I honestly think that if you want a reason to feel positive, take a look at where the PC gaming hardware market is going to go.
It's not that AMD will have the best products. It's not that we should all rejoice because we can now have pure AMD-based gaming PCs and can feel proud of the underdog story we've sort of participated in. It's that with 3 different hardware manufacturers all creating top quality products each, we'll keep forcing the other to up its game, force them to think about what's best for their business, and, in those circumstances, the best thing is to appeal to as many PC gamers as possible.
And with each company vying for our attention and of course our money, instead of them knowing that they're simply our only real option, we're going to find ourselves facing an influx of fantastic new technology with increased competition, hopefully locking in the pricing at sensible levels.
The power of positivity.
Indeed. A real golden age of PC gaming then, and that's thanks to AMD and the inspired recent choices it has made, not least of which is who should be its president and CEO, obviously.
Thanks for watching. We hope you found that interesting. I'm sure we'll find out in the comments below.
So yeah, like, subscribe, ring that bell and come back soon. We get lonely in here.
Bye.